Welcome to this video on the uses of the people by Pierre Bourdieu. The goal of this video is to give you an understanding from the examination point of view. The use of the people is prescribed in the third semester MA syllabus of Calicut University in the paper The Cultural Studies. So in this video, I'll be giving you 6 steps through which you can understand the basic concepts of the use of the people by Bourdieu. Before I start, I have a disclaimer. Please have a paper and a pen and follow me whenever I teach. This is a humble request from my side. I am Pradeep Hariharan, and let's jump into what the Bourdieu has said. Before we go into Bourdieu's essay, I would like to tell you one more thing. This is what you may call as the juice of the essay. It's a very essence, it's a very minimalistic. I always recommend you read the essay in original. If you don't have time, just follow the video and see what happens. So I have made it into a very, what you may call, into 6 steps through which you can understand the essay, the use of the people. The 6th step is, actually, when you study a writer, he stands for what you may call a single word. For example, Marx is equal to communism. When you speak of Freud, what comes to our mind? Psychoanalysis. When we speak of Barthes, suddenly structuralism comes to our mind. Similarly, when you speak of Bourdieu, the word that have to come to your mind is power. Bourdieu is associated with power, how power is generated, how power is maintained, how power is exerted in a society. So in cultural studies, as you know, is very much focused on how some people always hold power and how power is exerted without even we are being aware of it. Then we will go into the most important aspect of Bourdieu. Third, the step is to understand what are the main arguments. Actually, this essay has got only 2 arguments. What are they? And next we go into the keywords. When you are writing an essay, you must use the keywords repeatedly so that the teacher knows you have read the work. Then, what are the questions that we can expect from this in essay and paragraph? And finally, we will recap and end this video. So before we go into that, we will start with the question side, because I always, we must know what are the questions we can expect from this essay. Yes. These are the 4 probable questions that you can expect. The first one, what are the use of the people according to Bourdieu? Then as a paragraph question, define symbolic capital. Again, there's a small spelling mistake in that. Define the term people and popular. And another essay question, what are Bourdieu's argument against defending cultural domination? So probable questions, not certain sure, but that is how you focus when you study an essay. Now we move into the most important aspect. As I said, Bourdieu stands for power. So how power is dominated in a cultural space? Bourdieu, as a writer, he is very much interested in how social order is maintained in a society. Order is maintained in a society. Actually, he says there are 2 forms of power. One is the aggressive form, the other is the passive forms of power. Bourdieu focuses on the second part, the passive forms of power. Then he speaks about how the ruling and the intellectual classes preserve certain privileges. Actually, as studying culture in a society, as an empirical theorist, he has done a lot of field work. He realized that certain people always hold certain privileges, power, and they are not ready to give up. And they use some techniques for others to into subordination. And while speaking of power, Bourdieu says that it is by accumulating some capital, some forms of capital, people control or have power. In other words, if you want to be rich, if you want to be influential, you need to have 4 types of capital. This is the central part of Bourdieu's, what you may call, most of the theories. Actually, Bourdieu speaks of four types of capital. The first one is the cultural capital, second one is the symbolic capital, third one is the social capital, and fourth one is the financial capital. So, give me a second. Yes, cultural, symbolic, social, and financial. In our essay, we will be focusing about the symbolic capital mentioned by Bourdieu. So, what do you mean by the cultural capital? Cultural capital, by that Bourdieu means the competencies, skills, and qualifications you have. That is, for example, a doctor. He has the skill of being a doctor, or think of a professor. So ultimately the qualification matters a lot. Second thing, you need a symbolic capital. What do you mean by symbolic capital? The prestige, honor, achievements. For example, in a class, the student who gets a top mark, he has achieved something, so people ask doubts to him. So he has amassed a kind of symbolic capital in his field. And thirdly, known as the social capital. How do you get social capital? Social capital is accumulated by having institutionalized relationships. That's why people join certain clubs, certain political parties, or certain groups to amass the kind of social capital. And finally, financial capital. So these are the four capitals that works in a society. Using this, people control over the others. And just like Spivak, Bourdieu also believes language is a mechanism of power. Actually, people use language not a means of communication, but more than a way of controlling power. So this is the basic concept you need to understand about Bourdieu. He stands for power, and he says power is maintained using capital, four types of capital: cultural, symbolic, and social, and financial capital. Without knowing this, it is very hard to understand the concept of Bourdieu. And 3 points about Bourdieu. Bourdieu is a French sociologist, and as I told you, he is an empirical theorist. He has done an extensive field work. He has came into direct contact with people, learnt about them. That is how he has formulated his theory. So unlike other theorists, Bourdieu is what you may call, he has done the field work. So he has spoken to people, has a direct contact with people. So it is empirical one. And the final point I would like to speak about Bourdieu is about the essay. It is taken from the book, in other words, written in 1990. So what are the three major arguments of this essay? In this essay, the uses of the people, Bourdieu asks certain questions. The first one, who is authorized to speak about the people or for the people? Who gets the power? How do they get the symbolic capital? How certain people gets the power to speak for the people, about the people? And finally, how certain people avoid the symbolic domination? So in order to understand this, we have to jump into the short summary of the essay. Here we are going into a kind of short summary of the essay. Actually, as I told you, the keywords of this essay is obviously people, popular, and symbolic capital. That's why I say define the term symbolic capital. They may ask you as a question. Don't worry, I will share this what you may call Google Doc in the description, so that you can go and understand this. Some of them are the repetitions, so I'm not going into that. The main ideas, we go into that. Bourdieu begins his essay by saying that it is very difficult to define two terms, people and popular, by the intellectuals. He says, the first problem is who is authorized to speak about the people and or for the people. He says, he brings examples from three fields. The first thing, in politics. He says in politics, it is easy to speak for the people. But when it comes to literature, you have to use popular. Okay, popular fiction, popular songs. We don't say people's fiction, we say popular. So the word popular goes more in literature, and people is more associated with politics. And in religion takes a middle stand. Either it could be popular or people. So taking from three fields, he says in politics there are people who come to speak for the people. In literature, it is all about popular. A writer, he is popular or not. Then in the essay, Bourdieu also says if a writer is more popular, he is devalued by the intellectuals. Okay, for example, it says in French intellectual, Zola was a popular writer, but the more popular the writer he becomes, the intellectuals will say he is not good of value. Then the second point he says how these two words, people and popular, what you may call, how they get the meaning. He says the word people is connected, linked with the cultural field of production, the field from which they derive, and secondly, the position they occupy in the field. This may sound a little bit, what you may call, strange. Let's go into that, what Bourdieu is trying to say. He says that there are professionals who always try to separate them from the profane or layman. He says professionals, it could be doctors, whomsoever, those who are educated, those who are qualified, they always want to separate from the common man, saying that they have certain power in the field of domination. For example, who can speak about, who can call a person insane? Only a psychiatrist. Who can do the, what you may call, judgments? A judge. Who can speak about a car? A mechanic. So there are some people who hold special knowledge. Okay, people have general knowledge, some people hold special knowledge, and the people with special knowledge always have a legitimacy over the field of cultural production. So the people who have the legitimacy over the field, they always want to dominate others using their knowledge. So if a common people goes to a self-help books or self-medication, what will the doctor say? Doctor will never advise the people to go to a pharmacist and buy medicine directly. The doctor wants him to come to him. So this is what Bourdieu is trying to say. So as far as the profession is concerned, a layman who is not using his service is bad. He is profane. Okay. Then the worst form of popular, Bourdieu says, is vulgar. So in culture, you say there are two variations. One is highly dominated culture, the other is vulgar. What is common is known as vulgar. That is why intellectuals disapprove of native music, folk dance, because they don't have a legitimate control over it. That is something belongs to the people as a community. So what you may call, the people, intellectuals, when they cannot hold a control over certain field, suddenly call those people as vulgar. Okay. Then in literature, Bourdieu brings in the examples of what stands for popular and what stands for what you may call culturally superior. He says in the 1930s, French literature were divided into two groups. One with the aristocratic group who were producing psychological novels, and the other people who came from the lower strata who were writing about the realistic novels. So the aristocratic and psychological novelists suddenly started to look at the realistic novelists as vulgar, cheap, because they were speaking about day-to-day activities, daily life. They want people, they cannot approve of people using literature to speak about everyday realities. They wanted to keep something, literature as something aristocratic, something pure, something which only they can produce, not the local man on the street. So that is how they started to call these people as popular, the vulgar literature, whereas their aristocratic literature as the superior one. So now you get the point, how some people hold power in certain area based on the way they produced. And again, the second point, who benefits from the use of the people? Why some people claim this legitimacy over the use of the word people? For example, Bourdieu says people get the power by the proximity to a group of people. For example, the workers' union, it is because of their proximity they claim they represent for them. And this is known as the symbolic capital. Symbolic capital is a capital you get by being associated with a social group, and you become a spokesperson for that group. He says in literature, symbolic capital is used by writers who belongs to a particular region. For example, Salman Rushdie. It is not written in the essay. This is for you to give example. Salman Rushdie, he can call himself as an Indian writer, also as a British writer. Because he writes on the Indian themes, So he's an Indian writer. Still he is living in Britain. He can be called as a British writer because of his proximity to the place where he stays. And the example he gives is that of Leon Clad's. Leon Clad's, actually, he comes from a small region of France, and he claims his proximity to the land so that the people will identify him as the regional writer, so that his books will be sold more. So these writers use this symbolic capital, this association, for their benefits. Okay, now you get the point. So that is the use of the people. Says that is some people who claim the authority to speak for a group of people, and by using that they promote themselves, they sell their products, they dominate the market. Then towards the end of the essay, Bourdieu says there are a certain group of people who try to resist such cultural domination. He takes the example from Lewis Carroll's use of slang. As you know, slang is not accepted in standard speech, but popular or common people use a lot of slangs. So what Bourdieu says is that slang is treated as vulgar, but it is a way of resisting the cultural domination. So he says towards the end of the essay, resistance may be alienating, but submission may be liberating. That is, if you resist, people will alienate you. If you use slang words, if you don't follow the standard cultural formats, people will alienate you. But Bourdieu says that is the liberating thing. Actually, why should we stand for somebody's recognition when we can liberate ourselves? So this is an essay. It's a strong call for action, saying that people, they need not have to follow a culture that they cannot experience. As I told you, in cultural studies, there are two ways. One is the experienced culture, one is the imposed culture. So there are certain group of people, they have been imposing a culture that is not ours. So Bourdieu says you have to follow a culture in which you are born, in which you can associate, in which you can experience, than a culture which is alien to you. Yes. Coming back, so these are the three arguments which we summarized. Who is authorized to speak for the people? How they get the symbolic power, as I told you, by association. How to avoid symbolic domination. And the keywords, as I told you, people, popular and symbolic capital, which you have to repeat. And the questions, again, what are the use of the people according to Bourdieu? Use of the people means some people claim legitimacy over a certain group of people so that they can promote themselves. They can use the symbolic capital to promote. So they, in order for their own benefit, they accumulate a symbolic capital. Symbolic capital is a capital which is accumulated by association to a particular proximity, so that they become the spokesperson for a particular group, and using that power they start to represent their desires, and they become what you may call the spokesperson, as I repeat. So in order to sum up, to recap, we can say that the use of the people, in which Bourdieu opens up or asks us to think differently about how in politics, in literature, people use the term people and they stand for them for their own benefit to get a symbolic capital, not for the benefit of the people. So towards the end, Bourdieu asks for us to focus on the experienced culture and resist the symbolic capital. I hope you understood. It was very fastly done. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate your comments for me to improve. You will get the notes, both of this, in the link. I'll see you in another video.